The winter wind cut through the narrow streets of Detroit, Michigan, carrying with it the sharp scent of iron from rusted fences and the acrid smoke of nearby factories. On the cracked asphalt, a thin, trembling cat lay collapsed, its fur matted with dirt and patches of skin showing through. Its body shivered violently, every rib pushing against its fragile skin. A man in his 40s, Andrew Collins, stopped mid-stride, his breath visible in the freezing air. He froze, staring at the frail creature gasping for life, while cars passed by, their headlights sweeping coldly across the scene, indifferent to the suffering on the ground. Andrew's boots scraped the pavement as he crouched, his knees creaking against the cold. He extended his gloved hand, hesitant, the air sharp with gasoline fumes and distant sirens. The cat's eyes opened just a fraction, golden yet clouded, reflecting pain and suspicion. It tried to push itself up, claws scraping the asphalt, but its body betrayed it, collapsing once more with a faint, broken sound that cut through Andrew's chest like glass. The noise was not a meow, it was a rasp, a plea wrapped in silence. He glanced around, hoping to see someone else, anyone who might take charge. But the sidewalks were empty, the city wrapped in its usual indifference. The cold gnawed at Andrew's face. But the creature's fragility pulled him deeper into a decision he wasn't sure he was ready for. He reached into his coat pocket, fumbling for a strip of jerky he had carried since the morning, thinking maybe the scent could awaken something inside the broken animal. The strip trembled in his fingers, as much from his nerves as from the wind slicing through him. The cat flinched at the smell, nostrils twitching weakly. Its head lifted an inch, wavering in the air as though the effort might shatter it entirely. A sudden gust of wind dragged loose papers across the street, startling the cat enough to let out a faint hiss, its body trembling like a string pulled too tight. Andrew held his ground, lowering his hand to the pavement slowly, inch by inch, letting the smell of the jerky drift closer. His heartbeat thudded against his ribs, louder than the traffic. For a moment, nothing. The cat's eyes glazed again, its body slackening as though life itself was slipping away. Andrew's breath caught. He thought he had been too late. Then, a twitch of whiskers, a slow, reluctant crawl. The animal dragged itself forward, paws scraping on the cold grit, every inch gained with visible agony. Andrew's throat tightened as he realized how desperately it fought, clinging to survival despite the weight crushing it. That fragile determination burned through the icy night. As the cat reached the food, its mouth opened clumsily, trying to chew but choking on the effort. Andrew's instincts pushed him closer, his gloved hand hovering near its frail body. Suddenly, the cat lashed weakly with its claws, swiping at the air, not at him, but at the fear of being trapped. The blow barely brushed his wrist, but the gesture was clear. Trust had been stolen from this animal long ago. Andrew drew in a steady breath, resisting the urge to back away. The sound of approaching footsteps echoed from the far end of the street. Andrew turned sharply, spotting two men in dark jackets moving briskly, talking loudly, oblivious to what lay on the ground. Fear shot through him, not for himself, but for the fragile life between his knees. If someone careless stepped closer, one wrong motion could end what little chance the cat still had. Andrew shielded the animal subtly with his body, lowering himself further, as if his frame alone could create a safe pocket against the world. The men passed without glancing, their voices fading into the hum of the city. Andrew exhaled a shaky breath, his pulse still racing. He turned back to the cat, which now licked at the jerky with clumsy movements, too weak to consume more than fragments. Its tail twitched once, then fell limp again. Andrew's chest tightened. He knew feeding it here would not be enough. Time was running too fast. The decision became heavy in his chest. Either walk away like so many already had, or carry this frail, suspicious life into his own uncertain hands. His fingers brushed against the cat's filthy fur for the first time, and the trembling beneath his palm told him there was still a fragile heartbeat left to save. The city's cold bit deeper as Andrew gathered his strength, slipping his arms beneath the frail body. The cat let out a broken cry, weak but sharp, a sound that sliced through the night air. Its body tensed against his hands, claws barely grazing his coat, yet Andrew held steady, whispering low, "Easy, easy now." The animal's weight was shockingly light, as if he were lifting nothing but bones wrapped in a thin coat of fur. The faint warmth pressed against his chest was the only proof of life he could feel. As he rose, the cat shuddered violently, curling into itself as though the very act of being held was a threat. Its head twisted, golden eyes glaring with the little fire they still held. Andrew's boots struck the frozen ground with each step, the rhythm echoing between the buildings. He glanced over his shoulder cars swept past on the avenue, their lights cutting across the street like brief explosions of white. Every sound seemed magnified. The squeal of brakes, the crunch of salt beneath his solace, the low hum of the city refusing to sleep. Halfway down the block, Andrew's breath grew heavier. He wasn't unfit, but the tension of carrying something so fragile made every muscle ache. He knew he had to reach his truck parked 2 streets away. Yet each step stretched longer, as if the world itself was slowing him down. A dog barked suddenly from a fenced yard, deep and aggressive, sending a violent tremor through the cat's frail body. It clawed weakly at Andrew's chest, a desperate instinct to escape. His grip tightened, his voice steadying, "I've got you. I won't let go." The animal's head pressed into his jacket, trembling violently against the rough wool. Andrew could feel its shallow breaths, uneven and erratic, fluttering like torn paper against his ribs. He shifted his grip carefully, afraid of hurting it further, afraid of losing the fragile bond beginning to form in silence. Each block stretched into eternity, the city's noises chasing them like shadows, a bottle shattering somewhere nearby, laughter erupting, a sudden car horn blasting. The cat flinched at every sound, each noise another threat in a life built on fear. Finally, he reached the narrow lot where his old pickup sat coated in frost. The sight of it should have been relief, but a new problem revealed itself. The truck's lock was stiff from the cold, and he had only one free hand. The cat writhed weakly as he fumbled with the key, its fragile claws scraping against his arm. Panic flickered in Andrew's chest, the seconds dragged, the key refusing to turn, the animal slipping further into panic. His breath steamed the air, muttering, "Come on." The lock gave with a metallic click, a sound that released a wave of relief through him. He pulled the door open, sliding into the driver's seat, the cat nestled awkwardly against him. Its ears twitched at the slam of the door, eyes darting around the dark, confined space. Andrew laid it gently across a folded blanket he kept behind the seat. The fabric sank beneath the tiny weight, swallowing the fragile shape in folds of worn cotton. For the first time, the cat didn't fight. Its body sagged into the warmth, eyes half closed, teetering between trust and collapse. He started the engine, the low growl vibrating through the truck's frame. The noise startled the animal, its head jerking up, body tensing as if ready to flee. Andrew placed his hand near, palm open, not touching but close enough for the cat to sense his presence. The golden eyes flickered between fear and exhaustion, until at last they drooped again, surrendering to the faint comfort of stillness. Andrew felt the gravity of the moment. It wasn't victory, it wasn't safety, but it was one step away from despair. As he pulled onto the empty street, headlights carving tunnels in the night, Andrew kept stealing glances at the bundle of fur breathing shallowly on the seat. The cat's chest rose and fell with fragile rhythm, a fragile heartbeat echoing against the silence inside the cab. His hands gripped the steering wheel tighter, the weight of responsibility pressing against him heavier than ever. He didn't know if the animal would survive the night. What he did know, carved deep into his chest, was this: he was now bound to it, and turning back was no longer an option. The truck rattled down the dark streets of Detroit, each pothole threatening to jolt the fragile bundle on the seat. Andrew's eyes kept darting between the road and the cat, his pulse rising whenever its tiny chest seemed to pause. The heater pushed out faint warmth, but it was slow, the cab still filled with the sting of frozen air. The cat stirred, lifting its head just enough to let out a weak, rasping sound, more breath than voice. Andrew's throat tightened. He knew that sound came from the edge of collapse. He pressed harder on the accelerator, the city rushing by in blurred streaks of neon and shadow. The veterinary clinic, he remembered, was across town, but every second mattered and doubt gnawed at him. What if it closed hours ago? What if he arrived too late? The thought slammed into his chest like a hammer. He glanced again at the passenger seat. The cat's eyes were half-lidded, its body twitching faintly as if fighting off invisible phantoms. That fragile heartbeat kept him pushing forward. Red lights stretched the minutes longer, trapping him in stillness while time bled away. At one intersection, a group of men crossed slowly in front of the truck, their laughter harsh, echoing off the brick walls. One of them glanced inside, eyes lingering on the bundle in the seat, but Andrew tightened his jaw and stared forward, one hand resting protectively on the blanket. The figures passed, leaving only the fading smell of smoke trailing into the cab. The cat shifted again, letting out another broken rasp. Andrew whispered, "Hold on, just hold on for me." When he finally turned onto a quieter street, the familiar green sign of the clinic emerged from the darkness. Relief surged until he saw the lights. The building was dim, only a single bulb glowing near the door. A chain hung across the small parking lot, blocking his way. His gut twisted, closed. He slammed the steering wheel once, the sound startling the cat into a weak hiss. Guilt immediately pierced through him, and he reached over, brushing his fingers gently against the trembling fur, murmuring, "I'm sorry. I've got you." With no other choice, he swerved away from the clinic, the streets stretching endlessly ahead. The weight of uncertainty pressed heavier with every turn. His only option left was his small apartment on the east side. It wasn't much, but it was shelter, warmth, and maybe enough for the night. He tightened his grip on the wheel, determination hardening in his chest. If he couldn't hand this fragile life to professionals yet, he would fight for it himself. The cat stirred, pawing weakly at the blanket, as if searching for escape. Its golden eyes flickered open, catching the glow of the passing streetlights. There was fire there still, even beneath exhaustion, a defiant glint that refused to fade. Andrew caught that gaze and felt something shift inside him, an unspoken pact. Fear and suspicion still filled the animal, but behind it was a will to survive. He whispered again, steady and quiet, "You're not alone anymore." Minutes later, he pulled into the cracked driveway of his apartment building, the headlights cutting across the peeling paint and broken steps. The engine went silent, leaving only the muffled thrum of the city in the distance. For a moment, he sat still, his hand resting on the blanket, feeling the faint tremors beneath it. This was the moment of truth inside. The cat would face a new prison of walls and smells, and he didn't know if its fragile heart could take it. Gathering the blanket carefully, Andrew lifted the small body once more. The cat squirmed weakly, claws grazing his arm, but he held firm, steady as stone. The icy wind bit against his face as he stepped out, his boots crunching on gravel. Each step up the stairs felt louder, heavier, like the world was holding its breath. At his door, he fumbled with the keys, the cat letting out another faint cry, as if echoing his own anxiety. The lock clicked open, the warm air spilling out from inside, and Andrew whispered the only promise he could give, "You're safe now, at least for tonight." The door creaked shut behind him, muffling the noise of the city until only the faint hum of his old radiator filled the air. Andrew carried the blanket-wrapped cat into his small apartment, the dim glow of a single lamp painting the room in warm amber. He set the fragile bundle down on a soft towel spread across his couch. For a long moment, the cat didn't move, its body curled tightly, every muscle locked in silent fear. Andrew crouched nearby, his hands steady but his breath shallow, waiting to see if the animal would choose fight, flight, or surrender. The faint smell of disinfectant mixed with the faint musk of the cat's fur, sharp and raw from the street. Andrew opened a drawer and pulled out a shallow bowl, filling it with lukewarm water. He set it on the floor, the sound of the ceramic clink echoing in the quiet room. The cat's ears twitched at the noise, its golden eyes blinking open, suspicious and clouded. Its body trembled as it shifted, slowly lowering its head. The first attempt to lap at the water ended in a cough, droplets spilling onto the towel. But Andrew felt relief flood his chest, the will to drink was still there. Still crouched, Andrew pulled out a can of tuna he had stashed in the back of his cupboard. The sharp metallic pop of the lid filled the air, and instantly the cat's body stiffened. A moment later, its nostrils twitched, catching the scent. Andrew placed the plate gently on the floor, careful not to make sudden moves. The cat hesitated, staring at him first, a war between fear and hunger etched in its trembling frame. Then, with a weak crawl, it slid toward the plate, paws dragging across the towel with a sound that made Andrew's throat tighten. It began to eat, clumsy and desperate, each bite too large, forcing pauses as if the effort of survival alone was almost unbearable. Andrew sat on the floor beside it, cross-legged, his arms resting on his knees. He didn't move closer, didn't push, he simply shared the space, his presence steady like a wall of calm around the fragile creature. The sound of chewing, faint and irregular, became the most precious rhythm in the room, For the first time since finding it, Andrew let out a long, quiet breath. But then the cat froze. Its ears shot back, body tense, eyes locking on him, as if suddenly remembering the threat of the human crouched nearby. A low hiss escaped its throat, weak but sharp, claws half extending. Andrew didn't flinch. He simply lowered his hand slowly, placing a palm up on the floor, a silent offering. The hiss lingered for a moment, then faltered. The cat's trembling grew worse, its body torn between instinct and exhaustion. For a long, unbearable silence, neither of them moved. Finally, the cat shifted closer, not to touch, but to test. It sniffed the air near Andrew's fingers, each breath shallow and suspicious. Andrew's heart pounded against his ribs, but he stayed perfectly still. The cat hesitated, then pressed its nose against his knuckles, the contact feather-light almost accidental. The gesture lasted only seconds before it pulled back, curling once again into the towel, but it was enough. Andrew felt his chest ache with the weight of the moment. As the radiator clanked in the corner, the cat settled its head onto the towel, eyes half closed, body easing into reluctant rest. Its breaths grew steadier, the sound soft, fragile but real. Andrew leaned back against the couch, exhaustion sweeping over him, yet a quiet warmth blooming in his chest. He knew the road ahead would not be easy. Trust was not given overnight, and survival was not guaranteed. But in that room, on that night, they had crossed the first fragile bridge together. Before turning off the lamp, Andrew reached out once more, brushing the towel near the cat without touching its fur. In the dim glow, the golden eyes opened briefly, locking onto his. No hiss, no retreat. Just a silent acknowledgement, fleeting but undeniable. The bond was still fragile, but it existed. Andrew whispered, softer than the hum of the radiator, "You're safe. You're not alone anymore." And for the first time, the cat closed its eyes, not in fear, but in surrender to rest.